They say every masterpiece has a story, but this one was about to rewrite history. The day I, Adrian Locke, walked into the Larkwood Museum of Fine Art, everything seemed routine. A lazy afternoon crowd wandered through the grand halls, murmuring in hushed tones as they admired the famous collection. Yet by sunset, the jewel of the museum, the Aurora's Embrace by the enigmatic Renaud Ferber, had vanished. I wasn't there as a visitor. I was on retainer as a private investigator for the museum, hired after a string of failed security drills had raised concerns about their readiness to protect their treasures. My job wasn't glamorous. I'd been sitting in the surveillance room all day, watching endless footage of tourists, docents, and janitors. The moment the alarm blared, the entire building went on lockdown. Patrons screamed, security guards scrambled, and a flood of red lights bathed the surveillance monitors. I bolted out of the room, my heart pounding. In the gallery where Aurora's Embrace had been displayed, there was chaos. The painting's golden frame hung empty, its protective glass case shattered. Shards littered the marble floor, and the faint smell of ozone hung in the air, as though a thunderstorm had passed through. Museum director Evelyn Hart was already there, pacing furiously. She was a woman of sharp suits and sharper words, and today her composure was in tatters. "How could this happen?" she hissed, spinning to face me as though I held all the answers. I didn't. Not yet. But as I surveyed the scene, 1,000 questions flooded my mind. "Who was near the gallery when the alarms went off?" I asked. "Guests, staff, dozens of people," she replied, waving her hands in exasperation. "But the cameras should have caught whoever did this." We rushed back to the surveillance room. The footage showed the gallery just minutes before the alarm, the painting intact, visitors milling about. Then without warning, the camera feed glitched. Static filled the screen for less than a second, and when the image returned, the painting was gone. "That's impossible," Evelyn muttered, leaning closer to the screen. "No one even touched it." I rewound the footage and played it frame by frame, but the result was the same. No masked thief, no vanishing act, just a clean, inexplicable disappearance. "Could someone have hacked the system?" I asked, already doubting my own question. "Our security is top of the line," Evelyn said. "No external access." I wasn't convinced, but I needed more than a hunch. I spent the next hour combing through the physical evidence, the shattered case, the frame, the mounting hooks. Whoever had taken the painting had left no fingerprints, no fibers, no trace of how they'd bypassed the alarms. It was like the painting had vanished into thin air, and then came the twist. That evening, as I sat in the museum's boardroom compiling my preliminary report, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, my gut already telling me this wasn't a casual call. "Mr. Locke," a gravelly voice said, "you're looking for a thief who doesn't exist." I froze. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is the truth." The voice was calm, deliberate. "The museum staged the theft." I let out a bitter laugh. "You expect me to believe that? Why would they risk their reputation?" "Insurance," the caller replied without hesitation. "The painting's value has skyrocketed, but no one's buying. A theft claim pays out better than an auction ever could." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, a sinking feeling in my gut. If the caller was lying, then he was part of the real heist. But if he was telling the truth, the implications were staggering. The museum had hired me to solve the crime, but now I wasn't sure who I was investigating, a thief or the very people who'd put me on the case. As I leaned back in my chair, I realized one thing was certain. I was in way deeper than I'd planned. The following morning, I arrived at the museum to find a swarm of reporters clamoring outside the grand entrance. Cameras flashed, microphones waved in every direction, and Evelyn Hart stood at the podium, looking composed but undeniably rehearsed. "The loss of Aurora's Embrace is a tragedy, not just for Larkwood Museum, but for art lovers everywhere," she said. "We are cooperating fully with law enforcement to recover this irreplaceable masterpiece." Her words felt hollow to me, especially after the mysterious phone call. I stood at the edge of the crowd watching Evelyn's every move. She seemed sincere, anguished even, but sincerity could be the perfect mask. Inside, the museum buzzed with investigators, forensic teams, and museum staff whispering in corners. I caught snippets of conversation, theories about professional thieves, comparisons to famous art heists, and wild speculation about teleportation or supernatural forces. Everyone had a theory and none of them made sense. Evelyn found me near the surveillance room, her face tight with stress. "What have you found, Adrian?" she asked, skipping pleasantries. "Not much," I admitted. "The camera glitch wasn't random. Someone either hacked the system or manipulated the feed internally, but I need more time to figure out how." She nodded sharply. "Whatever resources you need, just ask. This painting is the crown jewel of our collection. Its loss could ruin us." I wanted to believe her, but the phone call kept playing in my mind, the voice insisting that this was all a ruse. Later that afternoon, I went to speak with the museum's head of security, James Porter. A retired cop with a burly frame and a no-nonsense demeanor, Porter had been on duty the night of the theft. "Let me guess," he said as I approached. "You're here to tell me my team screwed up." "Not yet," I replied, holding up my hands. "I just want to understand how someone could bypass your systems." "They couldn't," Porter said firmly. "Our system's airtight. The cameras, the motion detectors, the pressure sensors in the display cases. Everything was functional. Whoever pulled this off knew exactly what they were doing." "Or they didn't need to pull it off," I said carefully. Porter frowned. "What are you getting at?" I hesitated, then decided to test the waters. "Let's say, hypothetically, that this wasn't a theft. Let's say it was staged." Porter's eyes narrowed. "You think the museum's behind this?" "I'm saying it's a possibility," I replied. "And if they are, that means someone in-house helped make it happen." Porter leaned back, his expression unreadable. "If you're accusing Evelyn Hart, you'd better have more than a gut feeling. She's dedicated her life to this place." "I'm not accusing anyone," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure they were true. Back in my apartment that evening, I sifted through the evidence I'd gathered so far. The timeline didn't add up. The glitch in the footage coincided perfectly with the alarm's activation, as though it had been triggered on purpose. The lack of physical evidence, the absence of fingerprints, footprints, or any sign of forced entry, was almost too clean. I needed to follow the money. The museum's financial records weren't public, but I had a few contacts who could dig where I couldn't. By midnight, I had my answer. Larkwood Museum had recently increased its insurance policy on Aurora's Embrace to an eye-watering sum. The timing was damning. Evelyn and the board had approved the new policy just 2 months ago, citing the painting's increased value due to its connection to Ferber's tragic death a decade earlier. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You're getting close. Be careful who you trust." I stared at the message, unease prickling my skin. If the caller was warning me, then they weren't directly involved. But that didn't mean they were on my side either. Someone out there had eyes on me, and they wanted me to keep digging. But why? The next day, I decided to confront Evelyn directly. If she was hiding something, I needed to see her reaction when I brought up the insurance policy. As I entered her office, she looked up from her desk, her face pale and drawn. "What is it, Adrian?" she asked. "I need to know about the insurance policy on Aurora's Embrace," I said, cutting straight to the point. Her expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something, fear, anger in her eyes. "What about it? Why increase it so dramatically just months before the painting goes missing?" Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's standard procedure for high-value assets," she said. "We were advised by our insurer to update the policy." Her answer was plausible. Too plausible. "Who advised you?" I pressed. "Adrian," she said sharply, standing up. "Are you accusing me of something? Because if you are, I'd like you to leave. Now." Her reaction was defensive, but it wasn't the outburst I'd been expecting. As I left her office, I felt more conflicted than ever. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but something still didn't fit. If Evelyn wasn't the mastermind, then who was? And why did it feel like I was walking straight into their trap? I spent the next day poring over everything I knew. The insurance policy, the lack of evidence, the cryptic messages. It was all pointing to a conspiracy far more elaborate than I had imagined. The museum had secrets, but I still didn't know who was pulling the strings. Late in the afternoon, as I reviewed the footage of the museum's security cameras one more time, something caught my eye. A shadow. It wasn't much, just a faint flicker near the South Gallery entrance, right before the cameras went offline. I rewound the footage and zoomed in as much as I could. It was blurry, distorted, but there was no doubt it was a person. Whoever they were, they'd slipped through the museum unnoticed, evading not just the cameras but every other safeguard in place. It wasn't a phantom. It was someone with access, someone who knew how to manipulate the system, someone inside. I needed help. As much as I hated to admit it, I couldn't do this alone. That evening, I called an old friend, Maya Castillo. Maya was a freelance investigative journalist with a knack for uncovering corruption. She'd helped me on a few cases in the past, and if anyone could dig deeper into the museum's secrets, it was her. "This is bigger than a stolen painting," I told her over the phone. "I think someone's using Aurora's embrace as a smokescreen for something else. Can you help me figure out who?" "You're lucky I owe you one," she replied. "Send me what you have, and I'll start digging." The next morning, Maya called me with her findings. "Adrian, you're not going to believe this," she said. "The museum's financials are a mess. They've been operating at a loss for years. If they didn't find a way to bring in cash fast, they'd have to shut down." "Let me guess," I said. "The insurance payout would solve all their problems." "Exactly," Maya confirmed. "But it gets weirder. The security company that installed the museum's cameras, it's owned by a shell corporation that traces back to a private equity firm, and one of the firm's major investors is Evelyn Hart." I froze. If Evelyn had a financial stake in the security company, it meant she had the means and motive to orchestrate the theft. But why would she risk everything on such a high-profile scheme? Before I could process this new information, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You're being set up. Leave now, or it's over for you." The warning sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching, they were manipulating the entire situation, and now they were targeting me. I decided to confront Evelyn one last time. If she was involved, I needed to catch her off guard, to see how she'd react to the evidence Maya had uncovered. But as I approached her office, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. Detective Morrison, the lead investigator on the case, was inside speaking with Evelyn. Their conversation was animated, almost heated, but I couldn't make out the words. When Morrison left, his face was grim, and Evelyn looked visibly shaken. I waited until Morrison was gone before stepping into Evelyn's office. "What was that about?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Evelyn hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she gestured for me to sit. "The detective thinks you're involved," she said quietly. "He found your fingerprints on the display case." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I've never touched the case." "Adrian," she said, her voice breaking, "someone's framing you." I stared at her, trying to gauge if she was lying. If Evelyn was the mastermind, this could be her way of deflecting suspicion. But if she was telling the truth, it meant the real thief was one step ahead of me, and they were using me as their scapegoat. "I need to see the evidence," I said. "Where's the forensic report?" Evelyn handed me a file, and my blood ran cold as I read it. Not only had my fingerprints been found on the display case, but the police had also discovered a piece of fabric matching my jacket near the South Gallery entrance. The same place I'd seen the shadow on the surveillance footage. It was too perfect. Whoever was behind this had planted the evidence, ensuring that all fingers would point to me. But why? What did they gain by implicating me in the theft? As I left Evelyn's office, my mind raced with questions. Someone wanted to discredit me, to silence me before I got too close to the truth. And if I didn't find out who, I'd end up taking the fall for a crime I didn't commit. Maya called me later that night with more bad news. "Adrian, I found something else. There's a rumor circulating in the art world that Aurora's embrace was a forgery." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. If the painting was a fake, it meant the real Aurora's embrace had been switched long before the supposed theft. The entire heist was a smokescreen to cover up the forgery, and now I was the prime suspect. "You need to get out of there," Maya urged. "Whoever's behind this won't stop until you're out of the picture." She was right. If I stayed, I'd be arrested. But if I ran, I'd never clear my name. The only way out was to find the real painting and expose the truth before it was too late. I couldn't sleep. Every piece of the puzzle weighed on my mind, grinding away at my nerves. The planted evidence, the cryptic messages, the revelation that Aurora's embrace might be a forgery, it all pointed to a much larger game, one where I was just a pawn. The next morning I met with Maya at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city. Her face was drawn, her usual confidence replaced with an anxious edge. She handed me a folder filled with more of her findings. "This is everything I could dig up about the museum and the painting," she said, her voice low. "If the painting is a forgery, then the real one must have been switched out years ago, likely during the museum's renovation 5 years ago. That's when the security company first installed their system." I flipped through the folder, scanning financial reports, art acquisition logs, and personnel files. One name jumped out at me: Samuel Grayson. He was the museum's chief curator at the time of the renovation, a man with an impeccable reputation in the art world. But according to Maya's research, Grayson had quietly retired shortly after the renovations were complete, and then vanished off the radar. "Grayson," I muttered. "If anyone would have known about the forgery, it's him. Where is he now?" "That's the thing," Maya said. "No one knows. But I did find something interesting. He purchased a property in Vermont right before he disappeared. A cabin in the middle of nowhere." I nodded, already formulating a plan. "We need to find him. If he's still alive, he might have answers." Maya hesitated. "Adrian, this could be dangerous. If someone went to the trouble of framing you, they won't hesitate to come after you again." "I don't have a choice," I said. "If I don't figure this out, I'm done." That night we hit the road. Vermont was a 6-hour drive, and every mile felt like an eternity. As we approached the cabin, the dense forest around it seemed to close in, a stark contrast to the wide-open spaces of the city. The cabin itself was small and unassuming, with no signs of life. We parked a safe distance away and approached cautiously. The windows were dark, and the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. No response. I tried the handle. It was locked. Maya gave me a wary look, but I didn't care. If Grayson had answers, I needed them. I found a rock and smashed one of the small windows near the door, reaching in to unlock it. Inside, the cabin was sparsely furnished, but it was clear someone had lived here. A stack of newspapers sat on the table. All of them dated from 5 years ago, the time of the renovation. The articles were about the museum and its grand reopening, with headlines praising the new security measures and the expanded art collection. But it was what I found in the corner of the room that stopped me cold. A painting covered in a white sheet. I pulled the sheet off, and there it was, Aurora's embrace, the real one. Maya stared at it, her eyes wide. "This changes everything." Before we could process what we'd found, the sound of a car engine broke the silence. I peered out the window and saw 2 black SUVs pulling up the dirt road, their headlights cutting through the darkness. "We need to leave. Now," I whispered. Maya grabbed her laptop while I carefully wrapped the painting in the sheet. We slipped out the back door just as the SUVs came to a stop. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the area with flashlights. "Who are they?" Maya whispered. "Whoever's behind this," I replied. "And they're not here to talk." We crept through the forest, keeping low and moving as quickly as we could without making noise. My mind raced. If the painting was here, then the museum theft was definitely a cover-up. But who had orchestrated it? And why? When we reached the car, we didn't waste a second. Maya gunned the engine, and we sped away, leaving the cabin and the men in suits behind. As we drove, I called Evelyn. She picked up on the second ring. "Adrian, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tense. "I found the real painting," I said. "It was at Grayson's cabin. He knew it was a forgery all along." There was a long pause. "You need to bring it back. If anyone finds out—" "Finds out what?" I snapped. "That the museum knew the painting was fake? That they staged the theft to cover it up?" "Adrian, you don't understand," Evelyn said, her voice trembling. "This goes beyond the museum. You've uncovered something dangerous." Before I could respond, the call cut off. My phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. "You should have stopped." Now it's too late. I looked at Maya, who was gripping the steering wheel tightly, her eyes focused on the road ahead. What do we do now? She asked. We finish this, I said. No more running. The truth was out there, and I was determined to expose it, even if it meant risking everything. The drive back to the city was tense. The silence between Maya and me weighted by the enormity of what we discovered. The real Aurora's embrace was safely wrapped in the trunk, but that brought no comfort. If the message I received was any indication, we were marked. Whoever orchestrated this didn't just want the truth hidden. They wanted anyone who came too close silenced. Back in my apartment, we locked the doors and drew the curtains. Maya placed her laptop on the coffee table, pulling up her files. I unwrapped the painting carefully, placing it on the easel I used for my own amateur sketches. Seeing it up close sent a chill down my spine. The brush strokes, the texture of the paint. This was no forgery. Maya turned the screen toward me. I did a deeper dive into Grayson's records. After the museum renovation, he didn't just vanish. He was systematically erased. No digital footprint, no transactions, no sign of life. Whoever was behind this didn't just let him retire. They made him disappear. But why let him keep the real painting? I asked, pacing the room. If they wanted to hide the forgery, why not destroy the original? Maya frowned. Maybe they needed leverage. Or maybe... She trailed off, her fingers flying over the keyboard. A moment later, she froze. Adrian, look at this. On her screen was an email, buried in a chain from years ago. It was from Grayson, addressed to Evelyn. The subject line read, Insurance. The body was short but damning. The painting is safe. If you follow through with the plan, no one will ever know. But if I hear even a whisper of betrayal, it all comes out. My stomach dropped. Evelyn. She wasn't just involved. She was central to this. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. Evelyn, I know everything. We need to talk. Call me. Maya looked uneasy. What's the play here, Adrian? If Evelyn's part of this, confronting her might not end well. We need more leverage, I said. If we can prove her involvement, we'll have the upper hand. We spent the next few hours piecing together the connections, the forgery, the stage theft, the shadowy figures. It all pointed to a single motive: money. The museum's insurance payout for the stolen Aurora's embrace was astronomical, enough to cover mounting debts and fund their next big expansion. Evelyn had orchestrated a perfect crime, using Grayson as her accomplice. But there was one question left unanswered. Why frame me? As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with another text, this one from Evelyn herself. Meet me at the museum, midnight, come alone. I showed it to Maya. It's a trap, she said immediately. I know, I replied, but it's also our only chance to get answers. At midnight, I stood outside the museum, my nerves coiled tight. The building loomed in the darkness, its grand facade hiding the secrets buried within. I slipped inside through a side entrance, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Evelyn was waiting in the main gallery, standing beneath the empty frame where Aurora's embrace once hung. She looked calm, almost serene, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. You came, she said. Of course I came, I replied. You've been pulling the strings all along, haven't you? The forgery, the theft, the frame job, it was all you. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You always were too clever for your own good, Adrian. Yes, it was me, but you don't understand the bigger picture. Then explain it, I said, my voice hard. She sighed, gesturing to the empty frame. The museum was on the brink of financial collapse. The board was going to sell off pieces of the collection to stay afloat. Aurora's embrace would have gone to some private collector, lost to the world forever. This way, we secured the insurance money and kept the museum intact. Everyone wins. Except Grayson, I said. And me. You used us both. Evelyn's expression darkened. Grayson got what he deserved. He tried to blackmail me, so I made sure he'd disappear. As for you, I needed a scapegoat, someone credible enough to take the fall. My blood boiled, but I kept my composure. And what now? You expect me to just walk away? Her smile returned, colder this time. No, Adrian. I expect you to stay quiet, for your own sake. The sound of footsteps behind me made me turn. Two men in suits, the same ones from the cabin, were standing there, their expressions unreadable. You don't have to do this, I said, backing away. You've already won. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice a whisper. This isn't about winning, it's about survival, and you've become a liability. Before they could grab me, I pulled out my phone, showing her the live stream. Maya was watching from a safe location, broadcasting our conversation to a secure server. If anything happens to me, the whole world will see this, I said. Your perfect crime won't be so perfect anymore. Evelyn's face twisted with rage, but she stepped back, motioning for the men to stop. You think you've outsmarted me, she hissed. I think you underestimated me, I replied. I turned and walked out of the museum, my heart pounding. The game wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I felt like I had a fighting chance. I didn't go home after leaving the museum. That would have been the easiest place for Evelyn to find me, and I wasn't about to gamble my life on her sudden change of heart. Instead, I went to Maya's safe house, a rundown studio apartment on the edge of the city that she used for situations exactly like this. Maya was already waiting, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her laptop screen. Please tell me you got what we needed, she said, glancing up as I stepped inside. I closed the door behind me, bolting it shut. I got everything, I said, pulling out my phone. Evelyn confessed to the forgery, the theft, even Grayson's disappearance. It's all here. Maya exhaled sharply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. Good, because while you were out playing cat and mouse, I found something that's going to blow this whole thing wide open. She spun her laptop around, showing me a document filled with financial transactions. These are the museum's insurance payouts over the past decade, she explained. Evelyn didn't just stage the theft of Aurora's embrace. She's been running this scam for years, swapping out valuable pieces for forgeries and collecting the insurance money when they were stolen. My jaw tightened. So this wasn't a one-time thing. She's been using the museum as her personal piggy bank. Exactly, Maya said, and it gets worse. Some of the payouts are tied to offshore accounts that trace back to board members. Evelyn's not just a thief, she's running an entire criminal enterprise. The enormity of it all hit me like a freight train. Evelyn had built an empire on lies and deception, using the museum as both her cover and her weapon. And now she was willing to destroy anyone who got in her way, including me. What do we do with this? I asked, sitting down beside Maya. She smirked. We blow it up. Figuratively, of course. I've been compiling everything we have. Emails, financial records, the confession you recorded. Once it's all packaged up, we send it to every major news outlet, law enforcement agency, and art conservation group in the country. That's risky, I said. If Evelyn gets wind of it before it goes out, she won't, Maya interrupted. I'm using secure servers and staggered releases. By the time she even realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. It was a solid plan, but it still felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of snakes. Evelyn was dangerous, and I had no doubt she'd retaliate if she thought she could stop us. The next day, Maya and I finalized our preparations. Every piece of evidence was cross-referenced, encrypted, and uploaded to secure drives. The live stream from the museum was edited down to its most damning moments, ready to be shared with the world. By nightfall, we were ready. Maya sat at her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. You sure about this? She asked, her voice unusually hesitant. I nodded. It's the only way to make sure Evelyn can't wriggle out of this. She hit the key, and just like that, the files were sent. Within minutes, alerts started popping up on her screen. Journalists requesting interviews, law enforcement agencies confirming receipt, even anonymous tips coming in from other whistleblowers. It's working, Maya said, her voice tinged with both excitement and relief. But our victory was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a new message. You made a mistake, Adrian. Enjoy your last night of freedom. I showed the message to Maya, my stomach twisting into knots. She knows, I said. Maya's face hardened. Let her come. She's out of moves. But I wasn't so sure. Evelyn had resources, connections, and a ruthless streak that made her unpredictable. If she was coming for us, we had to be ready. That night, we fortified the safe house as best we could. Maya set up surveillance cameras, monitoring every angle of the building. I stayed by the window watching the empty street below for any sign of movement. Hours passed and nothing happened. The tension was suffocating, each minute stretching into an eternity. Then just as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, A black SUV pulled up outside. Two men stepped out, their suits and demeanor screaming corporate muscle. "They're here," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. Maya checked the feed from the cameras. "Stay calm, we've got the evidence. If they try anything, it'll only make things worse for them." But as the men approached the building, a third figure emerged from the SUV. Evelyn. She was dressed impeccably, her expression cold and calculating. She stopped at the front door, looking directly into the nearest camera. "Adrian," she said, her voice carried by the building's intercom. "Let's talk. Just you and me. No tricks." Maya glanced at me, her expression a mix of fear and defiance. "Don't do it. She's trying to lure you out." "I know," I said, "but if I don't face her, this won't end." I opened the door cautiously, stepping out into the cool morning air. Evelyn stood a few feet away, her calm demeanor betraying none of the chaos she had caused. The two men flanking her remained silent, their eyes scanning the surroundings with the precision of trained professionals. "You look tired, Adrian," Evelyn said, her tone as casual as if we were discussing the weather. "All this stress doesn't suit you." I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. "You didn't come here to comment on my appearance. What do you want?" She tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "What I've always wanted. Control. You've put me in a difficult position, Adrian. The evidence you've shared will cause quite the stir. But let's not kid ourselves. It's not enough to bring me down." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "We'll see about that. Law enforcement is already on this. The media is picking it up. Your empire is crumbling, Evelyn." Her smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "You're clever, I'll give you that, but you've underestimated me. Do you really think I've survived this long without contingency plans?" She gestured to her men, and one of them handed her a slim tablet. She tapped the screen a few times before holding it up so I could see. My heart sank as I recognized the video playing, a heavily edited clip of me and Maya, spliced together to make it look like we were the masterminds behind the theft of Aurora's embrace. "This little gem will make its rounds if you don't cooperate," Evelyn said. "You and your hacker friend will be painted as opportunists, exploiting the museum for your own gain. And with my connections, I can ensure the courts see it that way too." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Evelyn had outmaneuvered us again, twisting the narrative to her advantage. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice strained. Her expression softened slightly as if she pitied me. "I want you to stop. Withdraw the files you sent. Issue a public statement admitting your mistake. If you do, I might consider letting you and your friend walk away from this unharmed." Maya's voice crackled through my earpiece, barely above a whisper. "Don't do it, Adrian. She's bluffing. We've got her cornered." But was she? Evelyn had always been one step ahead, her ability to manipulate people in situations unparalleled. If I pushed back now, there was no telling what she might do. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You've made a lot of enemies, Evelyn. People you've crossed, betrayed, silenced. Do you really think they'll let you get away with this forever?" Her eyes darkened, the faint smile vanishing. "This isn't about forever, Adrian. It's about now. And right now, I hold all the cards." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you really think your friend in there can protect you? Do you think your idealism will save you? Let me remind you, people like us don't win by playing fair." Her words hung in the air, cold and cutting. For a moment I faltered, doubt creeping in. But then I thought of Marcus Grayson, the museum's reputation, and the countless victims of Evelyn's schemes. I couldn't let her walk away from this, no matter the cost. "I'm not withdrawing anything," I said finally, my voice steady. "This ends today, Evelyn. Your threats don't scare me." She studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a soft laugh. "So be it," she said, stepping back. "You've made your choice." She motioned to her men, and they retreated to the SUV. Evelyn paused before getting in, giving me one last look. "You'll regret this, Adrian. Mark my words." As the SUV pulled away, I felt a mix of relief and dread. The immediate danger had passed, but Evelyn wouldn't go down without a fight. Back inside, Maya was pacing the room, her anxiety palpable. "What happened?" she asked. She tried to threaten me into backing down, I said, but I called her bluff. Maya sighed, rubbing her temples. This isn't over. She's going to come at us harder now. I know, I said, but we're ready. We've got the truth on our side. Maya gave me a weary smile. Let's hope that's enough. As the sun rose higher, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Evelyn had underestimated us, just as she had underestimated the power of the truth. This wasn't just about a stolen painting anymore. It was about exposing corruption, holding the powerful accountable, and proving that even the most intricate lies couldn't stand against the light of justice. We weren't just fighting for ourselves. We were fighting for everyone who had been silenced, manipulated, and betrayed by Evelyn's web of deceit. And we weren't going to stop until the whole world knew the truth.